On this edition of Talk Fulton, the public safety push in South Fulton is on. Citizens and police come together to put an end to the crime issues in their beloved community, and we'll have important information for you to consider the next time you gas up. I'm Shania Chavis. This and more is coming up next on Talk Fulton. Stay with us. Welcome to Talk Fulton, everybody. I'm Shania Chavis. Criminals, beware. South Fulton residents are fighting back to keep their community safe. After a series of incidents at gas stations, the county and the community, they took action.
On the motion to approve, that passes 4 yeas, 1 nay.
You just heard it. With that, by a vote of 4-1, with one abstention, Fulton County Commissioners endorsed a plan to leverage the alcoholic beverage licenses of convenience stores in unincorporated Fulton County in exchange for establishments improving safety conditions around those particular businesses. Now, under the plan, establishments that have had a history of high crime activity will be asked to make security improvements to avoid further action, including the loss of their liquor licenses. Now, while the board is calling on businesses to increase security measures, it's also asking residents to become more vigilant so that they don't become victims of crimes. Officer Nicholas Williams is with the Fulton County Police Department. Sir, thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Shania. Thanks for having me.
Let me just ask you, everyone may not know some of the incidents that we're talking about. Give everybody a general idea of what's been going on.
Well, what we're having is a lot of juveniles or adolescents hanging around these gas stations and taking advantage of customers while they're pumping gas.
The term slider crime has been used to describe some of these crimes. What exactly does that mean?
Well, slider crime, as I said, while an unsuspected person is pumping their gas or distracted, an offender will approach the vehicle and slide into the vehicle and take anything of value, such as a purse or a cell phone. And in some instances, they've actually taken the vehicle because the keys were in the ignition.
What can people do to make sure that they don't become a victim of a slider crime, or any crime for that matter, when they are at a gas station?
Well, as simple as taking your keys out of the ignition and locking your car after you get out or while you're pumping your gas. You have to be vigilant and be aware of your surroundings.
And when we're talking about paying attention to your surroundings, is there a way to sense that trouble may be lurking?
Well, yes, you can sense trouble is lurking if you see people who are in the area who are not conducting business, such as the teenagers who are hanging out and just watching your every move. So that's a perfect way to determine whether somebody's going to commit a crime in your area at your gas station.
And officer, let me get your final thoughts on this topic.
Final thoughts, just be aware of your surroundings. Don't leave your key in the ignition, lock your doors behind you, and don't leave any kids or any pets inside of your vehicle.
Officer Nicholas Williams, thank you so much for joining us on Talk Fulton.
Thanks again for having me.
So when we come back, we're going to hear from a community activist who helped to draft the plan aimed at keeping people safe. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Shania Chavis. We've been talking about how the county and the community have come together in South Fulton to ensure that, in fact, all people are safe when they pump gas. Community activist Daphne Jordan has been working with a number of county commissioners on this issue and helped to get the resolution passed. Daphne, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So you formed this community group to work together to address this and other public safety issues in South Fulton. First, tell everybody about the organization.
Well, the organization is entitled around what was occurring, which was high crime at gas stations in South Fulton. As a resident of South Fulton, I found that these issues were plaguing us directly in neighborhoods that we frequented every day. And we formed the task force to galvanize the community, raise the awareness, and to get them engaged in the process of making and creating positive changes within our community.
And let's talk a little bit about some of these incidents. What was it? What did you hear? What did you know that told you, I need to do something?
Well, we often would have conversations or would share information in our own community apps regarding some of the crime that was occurring at the gas stations. And I just felt that it was time for someone to speak up. We knew that it was going on, and it just seemed that we had become a numb community to something that could have happened to any one of us at any time, including our family and friends that would just be passing through. So I decided to create first a petition, and that petition was centered around getting the gas stations to improve and standardize security measures on site, as well as galvanize local communities that were right next to us, neighborhoods, to let them know that this is what's going on. You need to be aware and safe. And to also, when it comes to pumping gas, there's a new day now, and we have to change the way we're doing things. We need to be more aware. So the petition initially was started, and the task force was formed later thereafter to help provide resources to help me to get the information out.
And we just saw a little bit of video there where what police are calling these slider crimes, where the individual pumps the gas, walks around to actually pump the gas, and these what appears to be a lot of juveniles are sliding into these cars and either taking purses or in some cases actually taking the car altogether. You talked about how you galvanized the organization. Let's talk now about what you did in terms of getting in touch with the commissioners, and how did you go about that?
Well, prior to getting in contact with commissioners, I did work with the police department. I reached out to them initially. I think it's important for community to know that the police department works for us. And so it was a great collaboration between myself, the community, and the police initially that later led into collaborating with our commissioners, Commissioner Darnell as well as Commissioner Arrington.
And you all actually came up with the recommendations for the resolution. What was that process like?
Well, initially looking at the existing ordinances that were already on the books, we realized that gas stations today pay a significant fee to offer alcohol, beer, and wine in their stores today. And that does come with a certain amount of accountability and responsibility. And also within that existing ordinance, there is a clause that states that they cannot have high crime incidences within a year, or that alcohol permit can be revoked. So we use that as leverage in the beginning to collaborate with the businesses to do more to create a safe place of business for us to do business with, especially since they're in our community. And there's something that's to be said about premise liability. So with that being said, we had several successes by working with businesses and just sharing that ordinance with them, reminding them that it is possible that their alcohol license could be revoked and non-renewed if they did not improve security.
And I understand that while there was a little bit of pushback from some businesses, overall, you all were pretty impressed with how a lot of these businesses actually wanted to do something.
We were. There was pushback, of course, because we all knew who the culprits were, and we hadn't lost sight of that. However, there were businesses such as Quick Trip that responded, and there were other businesses such as the Citgo in our neighborhood. They actually responded by investing in cameras in the outside area where we're pumping gas, as well as hiring an armed guard. They did that within a week's time of us galvanizing and asking them to do more, because the crime continued. At a 500% increase in crime year over year, I would say we all agreed that it was time to do something different.
And many people who may not live in that community may not understand exactly the kind of community we're talking about. I mean, this is a middle-class community, beautiful homes, great stores. Did it shock you that it was happening in your neck of the woods?
Absolutely. As you mentioned, it's a very prestigious atmosphere, neighborhood, middle class, working two-parent families in most cases, neighborhoods where there's a school within a half a mile radius of a particular gas station, and particularly the Citgo. And so we were shocked that this was occurring. We were very shocked that this was happening at the rate that it was, sometimes in 2, sometimes 3 times a day. So we knew that in order for us to create the prestigious community that we once were accustomed to, we needed to speak up, and we needed to get our community involved and engaged with creating the change that we know that we deserve to have.
And you were a part of one of Fulton's chairman's press conferences with police and the justice partners. How does it feel to have a seat at the table of such an important issue in the community?
Well, it feels that our voices are necessary, that they do value the opinions from the stakeholders, which are the community. We have elected most of these officials, so it's very important for us to be at the table with them when they're creating resolutions, creating changes that directly impact us on a day-to-day basis. So it felt collaborative, it felt very needed and necessary, and it made a big difference.
And you all also took part, you took part in the press conference, but your members also took part in that stakeholders meeting. And then also you came to the January Board of Commissioners meeting to speak to the entire board. How did you feel once the resolution was actually passed?
I felt a burden lifted. There have been a lot of sleepless nights. There have been a lot of meetings that we have attended. The Board of Commissioner meetings are very important. So to see the amount of people sign up for public comment, to hear the support, the level of support coming from the community was a breakthrough. And then to see the ordinance get passed was a very pivotal moment for us.
And from here, I know you've got some concerns. We've talked a little bit about the fact that a lot of these crimes, slighter crimes, have been committed by juveniles. What's the task force's perspective and plan moving forward as it relates to these juveniles?
We know that primarily the juvenile laws need to be reformed and changed. So we're in the process of galvanizing with legislature and legislators to find out how we can get bills on the books to create that change this year. We also find that most of the crime had been committed during the day. So we are looking at the existing law that's in place for school attendance, and we're in the process of galvanizing the school system to find out what can be done to hold not only the children accountable for attending school, but to find out what can be done to hold parents accountable as well.
There you go. And speaking of accountability, we're hearing police say, we understand the issue, but, there's something that all of us can do just a bit different from how we used to do some things. So what are your thoughts on in terms of now when you go to the gas station in your own community, what do you do?
Well, before I go to the gas station, I put my purse in my trunk. I'm a lot more cognizant and conscious of the process. It's no longer an easy task for us to do. It requires a lot of thought. It requires a lot of consciousness. It requires you to be very aware of your surroundings, and it also requires you to look around and make sure that you're not being watched. So before I leave my home, I place my purse in my trunk. Before I get out, I make sure I have my keys with me and I lock my door. I'm not on my cell phone anymore. It is a totally different practice and way for me to do things, but it requires that in order for me to be safe at the pump.
Absolutely. And I know you have some of those safety tips on the task force's website. Bottom line, what does this resolution say about the need for people to voice their concerns to their elected officials and to be involved?
It means if you are involved, you can be involved in the process. And that's a great thing because we've elected officials to do a job, but leadership is an action, it's not a position. So we all have a responsibility within our own selves to be a leader within our own community and not wait on our elected officials to do the right thing.
Well, Daphne Jordan, I am sure many in your community appreciate what you've done so far, and we certainly appreciate your time. Thank you for being on the program.
Thank you for having me.
It was my pleasure. We're back to wrap up the show right after this short break. Stay with us, everybody. Well, that's all of our time. Thank you so much for joining us right here on Talk Fulton, and thank you to our guest today. We do want to connect with you online, so check us out on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I am Shania Chavis. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.